What's up guys, hello to Football Talk here. We roll along with a divisional draft and roster review series in which I give all 32 NFL franchises their time to shine and share my thoughts on everything they've done this offseason. If this is your first time here, you can find my analysis on your favorite team in one of the other videos, unless that's in the NFC or AFC West, which are coming up next week. What we do here is look at 4 teams at a time, break down every single draft pick they made, analyze those players, their roles within the roster, how it ties in with the rest of the offseason, then share some overarching thoughts on each class and what it means in that context, what made sense, maybe what didn't, or what I just personally disagree with their evaluation or approach. To finish up each of these videos, I stack the 4 classes up against one another and kind of compare where I might have preferred how one organization handled it compared to another. Typically I give the disclaimer here that despite having watched 40 to 50 prospects at some positions, it can happen that 2 or 3 of these specific teams where players kind of slip past me, and I'll only share some measurables, testing, and maybe a couple of pointers, but I believe that's only the case for one name today. I don't want to waste anyone's time here, but just one more thing, if you enjoy my breakdowns, please hit the like button for me real quick, and consider subscribing to the channel. I'll have you covered all off-season, with discussions about the league as a whole, individual teams, alternate to analysis. I hope you tag along for it. The link to my website, HelloToFootballtalk.com, with all of my content, and timestamps for the Texans, Colts, Jaguars and Titans are down below in the description. But now let's kick things off with those Houston Texans, who traded out the first round, but then in the second had 2 picks with 34th overall Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver out of Iowa State, and 48th overall Ariel Ursary, the offensive tackle out of Minnesota. Then he went back to Iowa State and selected Higgins' teammate, 79th overall Jalen Noel, another wide receiver from the Cyclones. And the other third rounder, 97th overall Jalen Smith, the cornerback out of USC. Then in the 4th round, Smith's teammate from the Trojans, Woody Marks, the running back. A couple of 6th rounders, 187th overall Jalen Reed, safety Penn State, and 197th overall Graham Mertz, quarterback Florida. And then 2 more 7th rounders, 224th overall Keontae Hamilton, interior D lineman Rutgers, and 255th overall Luke Lachey, the tight end out of Iowa. First up with Jaden Higgins, which they moved on 9 spots from 25th overall with the Giants, who were targeting Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart for a 3rd round at this and next year, pick 99 this time around. I thought the Texans would either go wide receiver or offensive tackle early, and that's what they did with the first 3 picks, including both Iowa State pass catchers, who I'll talk about it collectively here. For Higgins first, my wide receiver 4, who I really liked for his skills at the position, but the physical profile ended up being more impressive than anticipated, coming into the combine at 6'4", 215 pounds, posting a 4.47 in the 40, a 39-inch vertical, and showing nice juice in his routes. Brings the ability to get DBs off balance, whip his hips around effectively, capable of snapping off curls or throwing a little chicken wing, breaking towards the middle of the field. He trusts his quarterback and allows the placement of the ball to communicate with him, has great hand-eye coordination hauling passes, and is strong with the ball in his hands. Now, Higgins can be a little excessive in his releases, and lacks the will to get on top of corners consistently on go balls, and he isn't going to wow you with a bunch of dynamic cuts in the open field to make people miss. As for his teammate Jalen Noel, one of the picks the Texans got back from Washington in a surprising Laremy Tunsil trade early in this offseason, much more of a compact build at 5'10", 195 pounds, but takes off like a sports car and quickly eats up cushions to safeties to put those guys on their heels. That frame combined with his play strength allows him to fight across the face of defenders, to defeat leverage and secure combat catches over the middle of the field, and he shows sharp focus tracking the deep ball, while no one is going to catch this guy when he catches the ball at full speed. Noel's probably looked more as a pure slot receiver by the NFL, with only 8.5-inch hands, and a small catch radius with arms of barely over 30 inches, and he weirdly isn't very creative or even efficient as an after-the-catch player. But what I think Houston loves about these 2 guys are that they are strong invested blockers in the run game, especially Noel. You have Nico Collins as your alpha X receiver, but the 1-year fly on Stephon Diggs didn't really work out. Tank Dell suffered that gruesome leg injury at Christmas and may not be available for all of 2025. Christian Kirk will have a role in this team, as they traded for him from the division rival Jaguars, converted most of his salary into signing bonus to basically turn this into a 1-year deal with several void years beyond that. But Higgins should immediately start in 2 wide receiver sets, and I think eventually Noel takes over the starting gig as a vertical slot receiver. This group suddenly feels a lot more well-rounded than last year, especially once those injuries hit. And in between those, Ariel Ursary from Minnesota. This is where Houston got a little aggressive, moving up 10 spots with the Raiders in exchange for pick 99, which they previously got in that trade down with the Giants. hulking left tackle at 6'6", 330 pounds, with good mass distribution across his frame, and it looks like he's pushing the sled in practice, with a little straining to move people in the run game, shockingly quick to jump into his pass sets, and has the broad chest to make it tough for defenders to get around, while his base is so strong that even if he loses the initial interaction, he's able to sit down on the bull rush, and he's pretty smooth at sliding laterally to mirror spin moves, along with being alert for twist action. His feet do seem to get caught in the mud at times, when rushes surprise him with quick inside moves, and he comes in pretty wide with his arms, which allows access to his chest, and he generally ends up on the ground a lot more than he'd like to see, where he whiffs some first contact in the run game, but loses his balance later in the down with limited knee bend to stabilize himself. But after Houston gave up a franchise left tackle in Laremy Tunsil, and we can question if the intention was right or the trade package was large enough, this is someone I believe can become an average starter long term. Right now, Cam Robinson is first in line for that job, and they also signed veteran Trent Brown, but he's consistently missed time, and Blake Fish on the right side I don't view as a solution, unless he shows substantial improvements this year. With those veterans on short-term deals, this was a much-needed selection, and to me, the tackles fell off pretty drastically beyond round 2. The later third rounder Draylen Smith from USC, I certainly didn't love that they moved on 45 spots from the top of the 5th round to jump up 5 selections here for a player, but I thought this was early for altogether. Smith was tasked with plenty of one-on-one coverage on the backside of formation as USC's boundary corner, where he looked very comfortable mirror matching wideouts from soft press alignments, and clocked him with the second fastest GPS time of anyone at the Senior Bowl, operates with extended vision, and constantly looks for work inside and zone assignments, and he's engaged as well as physical and run support, punching off blockers to involve himself. However, clever route runners can get Smith turned around on stuff like re-release slants, where they get him to open outside initially, and as good as the track speed was, you do see guys get on top of him in the early phase of go routes, where he's not really comfortable turning his head down the field, and I don't love his ability to stick his foot on the ground and affect the catch point in off alignment. So this is another indication that Houston wants to be a little more man-heavy, fully allow Derek Stingley's talent to shine after they momentarily made him the highest paid corner in the league. Kamara Lassiter and crowd receivers at the line. I didn't value as highly myself, but I do see the intriguing coverage skills. Then going back in the 4th round to USC, and I really wasn't a big fan of moving down another 45 spots from the 6th to the 7th round, along with giving up a 2026 3rd rounder to Miami to select Smith's former teammate Woody Marks, because even though they're obviously different players, I straight up preferred the back that Miami took in the 6th round in Oklahoma State's Ollie Gordon. Marks effectively transitions from horizontal to vertical movement thanks to his agile feet, along with the wiggle to get around defenders at the line of scrimmage. He looks like he's going through a slalom at times, when he can hit the defensive backfield with momentum and set up defenders, and probably a big reason they drafted him, he's a fluid route runner with plus acceleration out of his cuts and plucky hands. This is not someone who'll drag front 7 defenders with him and grind out tough yards, at times getting absolutely stonewalled by a linebacker in the hole, and he's willing to stand in there, but takes the worst of collisions with hard-charging linebackers as a pass protector, along with having fairly short arms. So I thought this was definitely early for Woody, and to give up that kind of capital is pretty wild to me. It looks like Houston would be very willing to part ways with Damian Pierce in the back end of his rookie deal behind Joe Mixon, but Dario Gumbawale is the primary pass protector, and I'm not sure if I love this rookie as your number 2, unless your new offensive coordinator Nick Rowley really wants to feature him as a receiver. 2 more 6th and 7th rounders each that I'll be fairly quick on. First with Jalen Reed from Penn State, solidly built safety with versatility to line up deep in the box or the slot. He steps down against the run with square pads and sudden hands to step past climbing blockers. Excels at playing over the top of routes as the deep help and choosing his angles to where he can affect the catch point, but also plays effectively to his leverage and is fully capable of matching with tight ends. He triggers on false indicators and runs himself out of the picture a couple of times per game at this point, and he lacks the range to be trusted with high post duties in defined drop-back situations on the regular. But that's why he drafted Kellen Bullock last year, and even to some degree traded for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. As much as D'Amico Ryans loves Jimmy Ward, having extended Jalen Petrie as the big nickel, and now grabbing a play in Reeds, even if it's this late but I valued him as an early free selection, it may be time to move on from Ward's substantial cap hit. Next is Graham Mertz from Florida, your classic backup quarterback with clean footwork and general mechanics as a thrower, featuring a compact release and delivering a tight spiral. He displays the mental capacity to exhaust full field progressions at a high level for a college quarterback, but also happy to just chip away with free access or plus leverage throws, and he has some sneaky mobility within the pocket, jumping up or sidestepping his college flashing. His completion percentage was massively boosted by perimeter screens, shallow crossers, and having receivers sit down at the line of scrimmage as an outlet, and when Wirtz feels the heat early in games, that mental clock speeds up and he can look rattled. That combined with suffering a broken collarbone, concussion, and a torn ACL since the start of the 2023 season led to him dropping this far, but I believe this guy can hang around in the league after the Texans brought back Davis Mills for one more year at $5 million. And then the two 7th rounders, first Keontae Hamilton, the D tackle at Rutgers, is the one guy in this video that I didn't watch individually, but rather kept tracking to some degree as I was evaluating a couple of his teammates on the Rutgers D. 6'3", 305 pounds, not a whole lot of backfield production, but a strong durable starter for pretty much the last 4 years. Still improve his ability to do ID run schemes, but has the quick hands to eventually be more of an impact player, although it'll be an uphill climb to make this roster. And finally, another Iowa tight end, although this one is much less heralded than some in the past, Luke Lachey, who missed pretty much the entire 2023 season with an ankle injury, but this guy is 6'6", 250 pounds, brings good initial thump and effort as a blocker, understands how to attack the blind spots of defenders as he pushes at them, and how to create separation out of his breaks, as well as finding space within the shell coverages, and he plucks every ball out of the air if possible, jumping back into contact when the fly of the ball demands it, before his basketball background shows up in how easily he transitions up the field to being a runner. He tends to dip his head and doesn't latch to steer defenders as a blocker with great grip strength, and needs to do a better job of reducing his surface area against hands-on coverage defenders and putting them in a disadvantageous position early in the route as he tips them off too much at times. But I felt he could end up being a steal as a potential tight end 2 in the NFL for an extended period. This team quietly already had Dalton Schultz, Brevin Jordan, Irv Smith Jr., and last year's 4th round pick Kate Stover under contract, so this looks like a very crowded room that will most definitely see one guy in the practice squad, and another guy probably signed elsewhere. If Lachey is the latter, he may find success on a different team. All in all, I understand the approach Houston took here early on. If I just graded out what they did over the first 3 selections of the draft, I might give them an A, because I actually don't mind doubling down on Iowa State receivers, here with the different skill sets they provide to play off each other, and in combination with Nico as the alpha there. Plus Ursary has starting NFL tackle traits, although he's a little rough around the edges. But even though I like Jalen Reed in the 6th, and Luke Lachey with one of the final picks a lot, the path to playing time understandably is narrow anyway for guys in that range, and if both somehow end up making an impact elsewhere in the league, that could end up looking bad. Which is my main problem with their approach with those 2 guys out of USC at the turn from day 2 to day 3. Both guys to me came off the board earlier than I was comfortable with, as is, and then they invested major draft capital into them, including tapping into next year's resources. I cannot get on board with that, even though the early selections on offense I believe will pay off. Beyond that, I'm not sure how much of an impact we'll see the rest of the group make. Next up, the Indianapolis Colts, who in round 1 14th overall selected Tyler Warren, the tight end of Penn State, 2nd round 45th overall JT Tuimoloau, edge defender Ohio State, 3rd round 80th overall Justin Wally, cornerback Minnesota, 4th round 127th overall Jalen Travis, offensive tackle Iowa State, 5th round 151st overall DJ Giddens, running back Kansas State, a pair of back-to-back 6th rounders, 189th and 190th overall, Riley Leonard, the quarterback out of Notre Dame, and Tim Smith, the interior D lineman out of Alabama, and then in the 7th round, 232nd overall Hunter Waller, safety/linebacker out of Wisconsin. Tyler Warren is a junkyard dog who received some Heisman hype at one point due to all the different ways Penn State utilized him, including as a wildcat quarterback, and even at one point lining up at center but catching a touchdown from an unbalanced formation. He brings the size, strength and strain to develop into a legit wide tight end, although right now he's at his best burying DBs on the edge when used as a lead blocker on sweeps and tosses. He was regularly put in motion and asked to run deep over routes, along with pushing up the seam and quickly gets his head around once he's cleared the 2nd level to get rumbling downhill. Obviously he has the frame and toughness to come down with challenging combat catches as defenders converge on him, and then the term I've used is he turns into a monster truck with the ball in his hands, just chugging through attempted tackles. There's too much herky-jerky to his route running at this point, he's not overly precise, and I don't think he's actual breakaway speed, while as a blocker he certainly has some refinement to do technically, but this dude becomes a bully whenever he steps on the field. This was one of the favorite player-team matches throughout the draft process, and now you add his skill set to an already pretty large offensive lineup for Indy, where I trust Shane Steichen to get all his pieces involved, him leading the way for Anthony Richardson on QB keeps, or maybe even next to each other in the backfield at times, could be fun to watch. JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State was one of the most productive edge rushers in the country these last 2 years, who could have easily entered the 2024 draft. He comes off the ball low and is ready to strike with good hand placement, and isn't content with just having done his job in the run game, looking to disengage and get involved in tackles. he's able to string his hand combos together and regularly clears the tackle's reach with the Tambahali-like jump and chop move. Plus he fluidly gets to his secondary hand combats and keeps battling to gain the upper hand, while showing high awareness for the depth of the drop and the quarterback's movement overall. JT doesn't tilt his base and anchors against angular blocks particularly well, where he's even get turned quite a bit, and he lacks balance in his hands or a real go-to move, including his speed to power conversion having room upwards. Not the most dynamic, bendy edge necessarily, but someone who can start right away and contribute on all 3 downs. Not sure how things shake out for the Colts, because they obviously made Latu the first defender off the board in last year's draft, and have Quiddy Pay on his 50 option. So who's in the 11 that's announced on game day? I'm not 100% sure, but I can see JT reduce inside and sub downs, and generally while the new defensive corner Lou Anarumo doesn't rotate his guys as much as previously, all 3 will probably get plenty of time. Then Justin Waller from Minnesota, a bit of a surprise to me this early, but a physical boundary corner with 42 career starts, has the ability to impede the progress of receivers early, along with the 4-4 speed to hang with them down the field. Reads the quarterback's drop with a quick trigger when he knows the ball is coming out in off-zone coverage, where throwing a quick hitch his way can be a shaky proposition, and he shows adequate effort and discipline in run support. Yet Wall is way too tall and pedal at times, and it leads to the late lateral transitions in particular, and he could definitely squeeze a bit tighter in deep zone assignments, where the intermediate middle of the field is available, leading to uncontested catches and glances and bang aids. So I had Wally quite a bit further down in my rankings, and categorized him as a reach after the draft, but I do like what he's continued to put on tape as an experienced starter for a secondary without many proven commodities at corner, behind free agent Travis Ward, with Juju Brents and Jalen Jones both kinda having been in and out of the lineup. Then in the 4th round, Jalen Travis from Iowa State, gigantic tackle at 6'8", 340 pounds, with 35-inch arms and 10.5-inch hands, who was experienced starting on the right side of Princeton before impressing at left tackle for the Cyclones last year. Takes good initial angles off the ball to take care of his assignment in the run game, while being able to create plenty of torque to get people off balance and put them into the ground, while as a pass protector, he sped up his initial kick into his sets, he smoothly redirects against crossfade movements, and his length allows him to throw off rushers in the early phase. Travis doesn't consistently take away the space to the defensive lineman, with the aggression you'd like to see to actually create displacement in the run game, and his feet and hands look rather disconnected throughout Senior Bowl week, which got him in a lot of trouble. So he has a ways to go to live up to his physical potential, but he really liked the makeup and what he could be as a swing tackle early on, since Indy has a definitive above-average pair of bookends with Bernard Ryman and Braden Smith, but otherwise they've taken some gambles on developmental prospects who seemingly haven't panned out yet. DJ Giddens, the Kansas State running back, is a 6'1", 200-pound back with pretty good agility and wiggle to get for traffic. He didn't time as impressively as I thought he would, but I think he can gear up pretty well, and then uses that momentum to drive through contact as he's being wrapped up. He's also light on his feet, releasing under the backfield, and in pass where he packs a pretty hefty strike. Now, he's a long strider who struggles with more abrupt changes of direction and offers an extended strike zone for tacklers to stop him early, especially with inconsistently pad levels as a finisher as well, and he had some inexplicably bad drops in 2024. Still, I know he had a lot of fans in the draft space and could have easily gone around earlier in an RB2 capacity. I like a little Herbert for them behind Jonathan Taylor, but the rookie gives you a little more size and ability in pass pro, to where I could definitely see the vet get outsnapped. Riley Leonard, the Notre Dame quarterback, is a big sturdy passer whose ability to put the ball on the money and throws outside the numbers when he's on time is pretty impressive. Routinely hits his receivers right after the breaks and time-based routes, with no qualms about fitting the ball into some tight windows. And not only do I like his ability to dovetail around pressure points and find platforms to release the ball from, but this guy's legit speed and power in the designed run game. Leonard flat out misses some throws where he's trying to shorten up his footwork in motion, as well as his base getting too wide. And he can feel a little erratic inside the pocket at times, along with not realizing when it's time to just dirt the ball. But I personally had Leonard as my QB6, and I thought he was worthy of an early day free investment, because I think the physical tools were actually underrated. What happens now in Indy when you have Anthony Richardson trying to prove himself in year 3, and sign Daniel Jones as a free agent this offseason? I don't know when the rookie might ever get an opportunity, but right now neither one of those guys has established themselves as a solution, and I won't rule out that we see Riley at some point this year. Tim Smith from Alabama is a well-built tackle at 6'4", 320 pounds, with an uncanny ability to absorb force, work from leverage, and be a rock in the run game. He can peek and shed in a gap control role, but consistently keeps his linebackers clean and chases after the ball. While as a pass rusher, he can hit a slap rip combo that allows him to charge past guys if they shift their weight too by one direction, throw them by. But Smith isn't much of a playmaker rather than a down leader and role player, and too much of a reactionary pass rusher who waste reps in the process, including some dull spin moves that don't really land anywhere. But to get him here near pick 200, to back up Grover Stewart for a team that didn't really have a lot of guys who can really hold the points beyond the starters, I think that's a solid investment. And lastly, Hunter Waller from Wisconsin, announced as a linebacker, I believe as his oversized safety, who is very comfortable in the box. Playing from depth, he takes quality angles, gathers and hits with his chest, maybe more of an average athlete for the position by NFL standards, but makes up for it with his play recognition and ability to trigger on stuff a beat earlier than most in coverage. And he combines nice route anticipation with the sternness to be a matchup play against tight ends. His transition in space can look a little clunky, and he's probably not someone who will make a living covering slot receivers in man for extensive stretches. And too often Waller waits to absorb contact when opponents are headed directly for him, both with blockers and physical runners. Most likely a package play as a big nickel and dimebacker, who will have to earn snaps on special teams, but considering they allowed a couple of safeties to walk, there's a path to playing time for him. Reflecting on this class as a whole, I really liked in his first two picks, getting the guy in Warren that was regularly mocked to them, and can add a different layer to this offense, who can take pressure off the quarterback, because you can throw the ball up to him, or watch him do the work after the catch, and a super solid at the end after you lose Dayo Odeyingbo in free agency, who adds a lot more physicality than the guys you had in place otherwise. That makes a lot of sense. The Waller pick after that was definitely early for me, but the cornerback was pretty volatile at that stretch. I just thought they allowed a bit of a run at the position to speed up the clock with how early they had to grab one. But I think on day 3, they got themselves potential quality backups with a swing tackle, a big and fast number 2 back, a quarterback with plenty of physical traits to work with, a backup nose, and even with the final one, a package player or at the very least special teams contributor. Other than Leonard, I don't see many value picks, which is somewhat cancelled out by Wally, but what I liked about how general manager Chris Ballard approached this is that he didn't solely rely upon RAS stylings, meaning relative athletic score, as he's done in the past to some degree. The third team today, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they of course delivered the first and ultimately biggest blockbuster trade of the draft when they sent picks number 5, 36, 126 in next year's first round to Cleveland for picks number 2, 104 and 200. And obviously the big trade up was for Travis Hunter, the two-way superstar wide receiver and cornerback out of Colorado, then a couple of back-to-back third rounders, 88th and 89th overall Caleb Ransaw, cornerback slash safety Tulane, and Wyatt Malum, the interior O-lineman out of West Virginia, a couple of fourth rounders, 104th overall Bashal Tootin, running back Virginia Tech, and 107th overall Jack Kaiser, linebacker Notre Dame. Then two sixth rounders, 194th overall Jalen McLeod, linebacker slash edge out of Auburn, and pick 200 Ryan Lane III, safety Navy, and then a pair of 7th rounders, 221st overall Jonah Monheim, interior offensive lineman out of USC, and 236th overall LaQuint Allen, running back out of Syracuse. As for Travis Hunter, obviously the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, and very much a unicorn prospect, with the ability to be a true difference maker on both sides of the ball. As a receiver, he shows easy gaps off the line, is very slippery before and after the catch, and while some refinement in his routes is needed, he shows the twitch and skills to expand the tree with dynamic cuts. While as a corner, that athletic confidence and body control, combined with the ollie hips, give him the ability to hang with top flight receivers, but it's really his spatial awareness and short area burst and zone coverage that truly impressed me, and on both sides of the ball, he goes up for the football with the mindset of this is mine, making some incredible grabs for contact, playing way above his size. Having said that, Hunter is certainly built on the skinnier side and will be challenged differently in the routes, as well as on defense with guys pushing off against him, and he's a tough time getting off contact with blockers once they've latched into his frame, while being more of a drag tackler. Hunter is one of the more fascinating prospects we've seen enter the league in a while, because of all the different ways he can contribute for his team. Can he really be the first player in the Super Bowl era to handle the workload of playing on both sides of the football full time? That's to be seen, and how Jacksonville handles his usage. But you do really like the setup with Brian Thomas Jr. as the number 1 receiver, kind of a tremendous rookie season. You have the big boundary corner Tyson Campbell. The rookie can kind of be the number 2 basically in both positions, and be in somewhat of a rotation if they want to go 12 personnel offense, or big nickel on D, if they feel comfortable with Jordan Lewis, flexing out wide to a certain degree after bringing him over from Dallas in free agency, which is exactly what his next selection comes into play in Caleb Ransaw, who transferred over to Tulane this past season after 3 years at Troy, where he played extensively, where he played plenty of outside corner, before he was primarily deployed as a nickel with the Green Wave, packs a strong punch to take on blockers, and disengage from them as the ball carrier approaches, while doing an excellent job of maintaining leverage and taking care of contain assignments. Solidly built slot defender with 4.33 speed to match up with various body types, with the 40-inch vertical to win aerial battles. While as his own defender, he shows disciplined eyes and good validity, along with the spatial awareness to drift and deny easy completions in the vicinity. With sub 31-inch arms, Ransom may struggle maintaining vision through blocks if deployed in an extensive box roll, yet he basically has no experience lining up deep, and he regularly is a tick late to react to the break in off-man coverage with lazy feet at times, where right now I'd be a bit worried about him sticking to shift slot receivers. So even though he had some nice moments as an actual safety during Senior Bowl week, putting him there extensively as a rookie probably isn't in the cards because he doesn't have the mental or live reps to see things clearly. But as I mentioned, as a big nickel, if they play Jordan Lewis outside, and then against 11 personnel on longer downs, you bring on Travis Hunter and slide Lewis back inside, he'll be competing with Jaron Jones and Antonio Johnson for more extensive snaps. Wyatt Mile from West Virginia is someone the Jags gave up an early 5th rounder for and got back at 7th in return in order to move up 13 spots here, but that was after catching in one of the biggest surplus value deals with Detroit, acquiring a pair of 2026 third rounders for a 6th this and next year, when they originally moved down from the top to the bottom of the 3rd round, when the Lions were hellbent on picking Arkansas wide receiver Isaac Tesla. For Milam, 6'6", 315 pounds, started all 4 years at tackle with the Mountaineers, flipping over from the right to the left side as a sophomore, but largely expected to move into guard. With the Mountaineers zone-based rushing attack, you can see Milam's ability to apply force at an angle expertly, work different combination blocks and cover linebackers, really well coordinated as a pass protector, being able to connect his feet on traditional kick sets, or being a little more individual in his movements as he has to counter in and out maneuvers, while projecting the guard that firm grip to clench the chest split of rushers in a way that doesn't typically allow them to escape anymore really stands out. Not a high-end athlete with super quick feet or crazy amount of natural power, who can get a little top heavy in longer runways, while Malum Bell hits 32 inches of arm length and resorts to hugging guys up the arc, rather than keeping them at the end of his reach for the most part anyway. That's why I don't believe he's going to be playing any tackle in the NFL other than in an emergency. But considering the Jags extended Walker Little last offseason and drafted Anton Harrison the 1st round the year prior, he probably wasn't going to get on the field otherwise anyway. Considering they also invest, taking into account that they also invested, but if either one of them or the tackles get hurt and McCarry moves out to the edge, considering he lined up everywhere previously for Baltimore, I think Malum is someone who can at least get the job done. Then Bajal Tootin from Virginia Tech is an uber explosive back at 5'11", 205 pounds with 4.32 speed and elite numbers in the jumps during the combine. And you can see that on the field where he's a master on outside zone because his burst allows him to capture the edge, but then he can also stick his foot in the ground and get vertical with the gear to take it to the paint. He also runs with excellent balance and frequently spins off glancing shots without much time lost, along with showing impressive hip mobility to alter his tracks. After some prior issues catching the ball, Tootin didn't drop any of his 23 targets last season, and he shows a willingness plus a low center of gravity to stand in there and blitz pickup. He's not someone who will run for a linebacker in the hole or turn forward for multiple points of contact around the line of scrimmage. And the big thing, he fumbled 4 and then 5 times these past 2 seasons on less than 200 carries respectively, where he allows defenders to slap or punch it out at times when he should be bracing for contact at an angle. He absolutely needs to clean it up if he wants Liam Cohen and his coaching staff to trust him, but this indicates to me that they're willing to part ways with Travis Etienne, probably for a solid offer, because now you pair Tootin with the sledgehammer that is Tank Bixby, even though neither one of them will be heavily involved as receivers. Then later in the 4th round, Jack Kaiser from Notre Dame, a former 4-star recruit for the Irish, who had to wait his turn but turned himself into a leader and impact player for the run at a national title game appearance. Can run shuffle run and track them ball carriers out to the sideline in impressive fashion, while being quick to fall back a gap and meet the runner head on. Regularly was asked to run the ball in Tampa 2, or even matching someone as a hook dropper, where he'll fly underneath the over routes and stick with them. And in man coverage, he races the space to running backs when they get out of the pattern and reroutes them early, which he had some great reps during Senior Bowl week. His arms measure just half an inch over 30, which limits his ability to punch and see through blockers rather than having to go around those, where he'll have some struggles against bigger bodies generally. And you love the aggressive mindset in man coverage assignments, but you may get some big plays as a result in the pros when a more talented route runner makes him whiff. On paper, this looks like a crowded linebacker room in Jacksonville, but having turned on Devin Lloyd's 50 option, he'll hit the market next year. They'd have an out in for Lukun's contract after this season as well, if the new coaching staff wants to start out totally new, and Chad Muma was in that same draft class as Lloyd. So I think this is someone who'll start on special teams, and then I viewed him as an eventual starter in the league, even if he may not do so for a lengthy period. Which this next selection, and I'll be quick on these two 6th and 7th rounders, also plays into, and that's Jalen McLeod from Auburn, who played this hybrid edge/off-ball role for the Tigers, which they tag as buck, heavy-handed edge center who operates with a wide steady base, who generally is sound in his assignments and shows good vision for the ball, packs a violent chop to knock on the outside arm of blockers, while simultaneously flipping his hips to the quarterback as a pass rusher, and I thought he looked comfortable moving backwards and turning his hips to gain depth in his zone drops. I'd say more of a linear athlete who doesn't reduce his surface area to threaten the edges of pass protectors, in particular on stunts and twists, and has subpar speed to range out to wide plays from stack alignments or carry vertical routes in coverage. Someone I'd be okay with pretty much right away to give him some snaps as a rotational player if they want to be more hybrid with the front and the new defensive coordinator Anthony Campanile, who we don't know a whole lot about. Ryan Lane from Navy is a solidly built safety who steps down against the run with square pads and is weight over his toes in anticipation of contact. Always feels in sync with the rest of the defense, picking up eligibles with good positioning so there's no air in the coverage, and has the twitchy feet and body control to take on extensive duties in man coverage against slot receivers. Lane is susceptible to getting drawn up too far on the front side of runs and ending up on the wrong end of the blocking as the blocker decides to cut back, and its questionable top speed with a 4.57 in the 40 usually manifests itself by getting grabby in those isolated coverage situations at times. After losing Andre Cisco in free agency, and the only actual addition being Eric Murray, I see a path for Lane rotating in and even starting a few games in case of injury. Jonah Monheim from USC is an undersized but crafty center with great snap-to-step quickness, tremendous football IQ with experience at multiple spots, and the mobility to take on challenging tasks in the run game, while as a pass protector, he's quick to pop his feet and square interior rushers, beautifully mirrors counter moves, and has alert eyes to decipher various games up front. He has cartoonishly short 30.5-inch arms, and you do see him get outreached by nose tackles regularly to where they're in charge of those snaps, and he simply lacks the sand in his pants to survive against those guys on an island in pass pro when they set out for power or work push-pull moves off that. With him slipping to the 7th round, the NFL pretty clearly views Monheim as a fringe roster candidate, and this one's interesting because Cohen brought over Robert Hainsey from Tampa Bay, but they still also have a year of Luke Fortner, so maybe they hope they can keep Monheim around on the practice squad and then elevate him for 2026. LaQuint Allen from Syracuse was my number 10 running back in the class, with the acceleration to threaten the line of scrimmage, and then the sudden shift behind the back of a blocker. He often leaves linebackers a step late as he darts through. He hits the defensive backfield with momentum and regularly turns ahead from additional yardage, and he's probably the most complete receiving back in the class, being able to line up anywhere across the formation, truly win one-on-one matchups, and catches the ball effortlessly. But there's definitely room for growth to manipulate front 7 defenders and contort his frame better to avoid getting grabbed around the line of scrimmage, and he isn't going to offer you a whole lot of creativity in the open field. But that's really why I believe this new regime is ready to move off ETN, because this is the piece that finalizes that group. If Allen isn't on an active roster by week 1, I'd be shocked. As I pointed out in my big draft recap, 34-year-old general manager James Gladstone established himself as the new sheriff in Duval County, with the big balls move up for Travis Hunter at number 2, and even cutting bait soon after with veteran wide receiver Gabe Davis, despite the dead cap hit. He's going to mold the roster in his vision, in combination with Liam Cohen, who also previously pulled a power move to get the former decision maker who kind of poisoned that organization, Trent Baalke, out of the building to make space for Gladstone. They paid a hefty price for it, but I do believe Hunter is that kind of generational talent, and I'm fascinated with how his usage, and therefore his day-to-day preparation will look like. Ransom and Malum both were tad early for me, but I do see a path for them being very useful, especially in case of imminent injury. With the combination of Tootin and Allen, they could soon have one of the cheapest, but also still pretty complete backfields in the league, and they add some more young pieces to a defense in transition that gives them flexibility down the road. I don't think they necessarily brought in great value with the selections they made, and we do have to take the extra first rounder next year going to Cleveland into account. That is big, but I don't mind this new wind blowing through the franchise. Finally, the Tennessee Titans, who kicked off the draft in Green Bay, but really the guy they selected first overall seemingly got very little attention, and that was Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami. In the 2nd round, 52nd overall, they selected Oluwafemi Oladejo, the edge defender out of UCLA. 3rd round, 82nd overall, Kevin Winston Jr., safety out of Penn State. 3 4th rounders, 103rd, Jim Radike, wide receiver Florida, 120th Gunnar Helm, Titan Texas, and 136th Alec Iomena, the wide receiver out of Stanford. In the 5th round, 167th overall, Jackson Slater, interior offensive lineman, Sacramento State. And then a couple of 6th rounders, 183rd and 188th overall, Marcus Harris, the cornerback out of Cal, and Khalil Mullings, the running back out of Michigan. I believed all along that Cam Ward was a quarterback legitimately worthy of that selection, and then there was a huge gap to the rest of the class, where the next 4 names I viewed more as mid-day 2 quality. Cam features a quick release and plenty of zip on the ball to access all areas of the field, stroking 5 deep outs with no issue, but you really love the flexibility of his arm to alter release points and speed up his delivery on RPOs in the quick game. He showcases a high level of anticipation for how the picture changes post-snap and where the space will open up for him to attack, not turning down opportunities to attack downfield, but also bulleting throws into soft spots against zone coverage. And he's a highly creative player off schedule who can glide around the pocket or escape it, slip out of the grasp of rushers, keeping his eyes downfield, but then also being elusive when he does decide to take off himself. There's a looseness to his game and some decisions he makes that can quickly take some of the great things he's done in a game and negate them to some degree, when really he could have just thrown the ball away, and he blindly trusts that a route combination will pull a defender that could otherwise sit in the window and throw some picks that could be avoided if he tracked the movement or lack thereof. To me, this guy has the potential to become a true franchise quarterback. As I said in my ultimate mock draft, if you build an infrastructure around him to protect him from wanting to play hero ball all the time, yet also allow him to mix in his incredible creativity and vision for secondary reaction plays, that's someone who can sort of revive the franchise. Then in the 2nd round, Femi Adebayo from UCLA. Tennessee selected 17 spots later than they originally were slated to, when they moved back with Seattle and secured themselves a 3rd rounder, which they didn't own one previously themselves. Adebayo is someone who transitioned from an off-ball role this past season, but you wouldn't notice it with the physical profile, with a 6'9" wingspan, a dense 260-pound build, or the playstyle. Brings heavy hands into contact to create knockback and set a firm edge in the run game, can condense the pocket with the long arm, but also chop down the outside wrist and then clearly reach your tackles, and he displays natural instincts for hand counters, where with more development to his craft, he's going to give opponents a long days of work. With limited experience on the edge, having to diagnose and click quickly against different blocking schemes is something Adebayo is still developing, and he's more of a linear athlete than someone who can disengage his upper and lower half, squiggle his hips through creases, or get them pointed at the quarterback to win clean and cross chops. But I think the league fell in love with what he could develop into, and even though I viewed him as more of a fringe day 2 selection, I love how hard he plays and chases after the ball. For a team that allowed Harold Landry to walk in free agency, but added Draymond Jones as this oversized edge who can reduce inside on passing downs, paired up with Arden Key, who has plenty of experience as a spinner over the center as well, I think Femi will get plenty of opportunities to continue his development on the field. Karen Winston from Penn State was my number 2 safety in the entire class, who people seemingly forgot about because he basically only played in 1 game last year due to an injury, but was awesome in his first year starting as a true sophomore for a Penn State program that has been churning out guys at that position for a while. I think he's perfect for the modern game because he's so comfortable attacking the action in front of him from those split safety alignments with great angles, but also the physicality to drop down into the box, and he's an outstanding tackler. Understands where the coverage shell may be vulnerable and quarterbacks might go without overplaying it typically, especially when rotating or spinning at the snap, and he's an absolute seam destroyer, while having adequate speed and great size to match different body types in the slot, including with extensive cushions. Winston needs to improve his pad level in close quarters especially, as he's dealing with bigger ball carriers and blockers, and he plays flat-footed and off-man coverage a lot and sort of catches or grabs guys when they take him vertically, and all gets a little too handsy down the field I'd say, but even coming off the knee injury, I valued him as an early 2nd rounder, and I believe he'll immediately beat out Xavier Woods to start alongside Amani Hooker, even though all 3 may be on the field together quite a bit, because Roger McCreary did primarily work out wide at Auburn, and Winston can even take off one of the linebackers on longer downs. Then we get to the 3 4th rounders, first with Trimmer DK from Florida, 6'1", 195-pound receiver with 4.34 speed, who showed it off on a variety of crossers, posts and corner routes, tracks the ball effectively over either shoulder, and has that alpha mindset when he elevates for passes in contested situations, hauling in 55% of such targets over the last 4 years between Wisconsin and the Gators, and he doesn't require any transition periods between receiver and runner, being able to spin off glancing shots and being fundamentally sound with not exposing the ball. All gas all the time, but lacks certain detail when a variety of pacing is required on certain routes, and DK finished his career with a 10.9% drop rate, 2 of the long passes to get tied to his frame. But this is a tough invested blocker, and I think will earn some early opportunities because of it. Along with the speed component he adds horizontally and vertically, with plenty of room to still become a more complete route runner. And he added 2 more pass catchers, first with Gunnar Helm, the Texans tight end, who has proven alignment versatility and the capability to execute a large route tree with a knack for navigating around traffic and being able to swiftly drop his weight. You see excellent body control and ball tracking ability on all 3 levels of the field, as a natural catcher who's more elusive with the ball in his hands than you'd expect. And he's an invested and balanced blocker who takes excellent angles to wall off bodies on the 2nd level. Not a very powerful run blocker, I'd say though, who will actually drive defensive linemen off the space, and he lacks the speed to truly threaten the deep parts of the field, or the re-acceleration to burn angles with the ball in his hands, which primarily makes him a receiving tight end, who I wouldn't feel comfortable putting at the Y. And that's interesting because Tennessee already had more of a movable piece in Chico Conquo, who does a lot of his damage after the catch, while Alec Aromena from Stanford is more of a traditional wideout with a powerful frame, who you can stick at the X spot. For being a well-proportioned receiver, Aromena's shiftiness off the line to get corners off balance and stick his foot on the ground to run away from them really stands out. He's capable of contorting himself for balls placed slightly behind him without really losing any speed, and then he kinda kicks it into another gear once he's running with it. Plus he's another guy who legitimately latch, drive his legs and sustain as a blocker to be an asset in the run game. He needs to work on his ability to gain clear stack position on fade routes and all play up to his size early in the route, and he had too many passes go off his hands because he already wanted to run with them. The contested catch numbers to me are more of a reflection of some of the ball placement issues that he's been dealing with his time at Stanford, and based on my personal rankings, he should have been picked a couple rounds earlier. I think behind Carolyn Ridley and to some degree veteran Tyler Lockett, there are definitely opportunities for snaps, and all of these guys, plus Van Jefferson, and even Cam Watt's teammate in Miami, who went undrafted in Xavier Restrepo, this will be a legit, deep competition, and to me Aromena has that 1,000-yard potential at some point in his career if he does come out on top. A bit more briefly on this final 3, Jackson Slater from Sacramento State is a compact guard at 6'3", 320 pounds, with great fluidity out of his stance, pad level, and agility to get to extended landmarks. While in pass pro, he deploys independent hand usage and resets his space adequately, capable of mixing up his punch timing and keeping opposing rushers off kilter. He lacks the type of curve you typically expect from NFL trench play, and has some oomph missing into contact as a puller for example, and he can become impatient and lunge with his punch and protection. Interesting small school prospect who I do believe can hang around in the league, but may never be a firm starter. Looked pretty good at center as well during Shrine Bowl week, so he may be your swing interior guy for a team that's invested quite a bit into the trio recently. Marcus Harris from Cal is balanced and agile, mirroring footwork at the start and the top of routes, primarily as a field side corner, effectively wraps around receivers as the ball arrives there, and races up against completions in the flats as a strong tackler, and he's invested in run support, freeing himself from blockers by pulling them off himself. He needs to improve his eye balance and zone coverage, where he's too locked in on the quarterback's eyes, and the receiver work can back down his area, and he allows receivers to charge into him, being pretty tall in his off coverage, to create separation by pushing off on him. I didn't think the gap between Harris and the guy on the opposite side of the field in Noel Williams was massive, who went nearly 100 picks earlier. Even though they are quite different styles of players, he only really played in the slot to some extent in 1 year, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if this is your primary backup for all 3 corner spots, or that they just find ways to sub him on if one of those guys gets hurt. And lastly, Khalil Mullings, the Michigan running back, which was about 50 picks earlier than originally slated for Tennessee as part of a pick swap with Dallas. A former 4-star linebacker recruit who quickly showed growth once he flipped over to the offensive side of the ball a couple of years ago. Mullings is a powerful, determined runner who operates with good feel for pacing and in accordance with the blocking in front of him, and then hits the defensive backfield with his pads out in front. Plus, he's urgent and sturdy to pick up blitzers, where at 230 pounds he can bring the boom. He's still working on his vision and conceptual understanding of runs due to limited opportunities in college, and right now is definitely looking for contact rather than trying to elude it, and he was basically a non-factor in the passing game as he only caught 8 passes in his career, meaning he's battling Julius Chestnut for RB3 duties behind Tony Pollard and Tyjae Spears. In summary, it was an interesting draft for Tennessee. I can't remember the last time a number 1 overall pick was discussed less, much less a quarterback who actually has the talent to justify that selection. Beyond that, they addressed edge and safety, the 2 most glaring needs on defense, before focusing on surrounding their new franchise quarterback with pass catchers. If you swap Holiday and Winston on day 2, they're basically right in line with the value I would have assigned them, and then Iron Maynard to me has a chance to be one of the biggest steals of the entire draft. Here's some things to clean up, but don't be shocked if he ends up outplaying some of the guys selected in the second round by other teams. He just needs to make his presence felt early on in camp, and I like the idea of having all these young guys compete for opportunities along with the 2 veterans already in place. I also really liked Marcus Harris, who immediately adds a much needed backup piece to a pretty slim corner room, and the same can be said for Jackson Slater on the interior O-line, even though he was about in line with where he was largely projected to go. This isn't going to blow away anyone necessarily, but I'm ready to buy into this version of the Titans much more so than last year, when the investments they made into veterans felt off, compared to where they were roster building wise, and with such a high volatility quarterback in Will Levis. That however brings us to our AFC South draft rankings, which I actually put the Titans at the top of. They may not have been here in most other divisions, but I thought General Manager Ran Carthon did a really solid job. First of all, not getting drawn in by any offers for the top pick, to secure themselves a potential true franchise quarterback, and then surrounding him with weapons, along with adding depth at positions of needed solid value. The Colts are second for me, 2 slam dunk picks to start the draft between Tyler Warren and JT Tuimoloau as long-term cornerstones of the franchise. The Justin Wallace selection in the 3rd round, where they kind of felt urged to jump on the corner round, I didn't love, because I didn't think the value was there at that point, and I just personally had multiple names ranked ahead of him at the position. But then on day 3 to get 5 legit quality backup pieces potentially, who mostly share starter qualities to a certain degree, going away from the RES-obsessed previous approach, I thought the strategy generally was pretty good. Jags at number 3, new GM James Gladstone definitely called his shot with the blockbuster deal to secure themselves a unicorn 2-way prospect in Travis Hunter, and didn't shy away from announcing him to the world as a transformational player in the following press conference. But I do think the new people with the controls in Jacksonville have a vision and want to push this thing along. I still believe in Trevor Lawrence as someone who could one day win a championship, but he needs strong leadership around him, where they clearly identify guys who play the style they want. And now it'll be interesting how connected this all is to the coaching staff, being willing to give those guys chances to beat out the veterans still hanging around. And at the bottom for me, unfortunately, are the Texans. Once again, if you showed me them selecting the 2 Iowa State receivers and the mammoth tackle in Oriante Ursary on day 2, that's a massive thumbs up for me, in combination with getting some capital back for moving down from the 1st round. But I just can't get over the 2 USC guys they traded up for at the end of the 3rd and start of the 4th round. Not only were those players not worthy of those selections for me personally, but I simply can't justify the resources they gave up in those trade-ups, including giving up a 3rd rounder next year. I do really like Jalen Reed, the Penn State safety that they stole in the 6th round, but process and resource management are important for how I evaluate how teams handled themselves here. Which closes out week 3 of this extensive series that I do every year. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the analysis, please let me know by smashing the thumbs up button, as some people like to call it, and hitting the little bell to know whenever I upload anything. Do you have any major takeaways on Cam Ward as Tennessee's potential savior, the Jags making the blockbuster move up to number 2, or anything else discussed today? Happy to dive deeper into those topics in the comment section with you guys. If you want to learn more about your favorite team's newest members, or really any of the guys selected over the first 2 days of the draft and more, I have breakdowns on pretty much all of them over on my site, helloswithfootballtalk.com. The link to get there and my social media channels are in the description of this video. Let's close out strong with the NFC and AFC West next week. So until then, see you later. Peace!